Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to talk about a subject that I've wanted to talk about for a while now, and something that specifically affects female characters and female readers. And it is caused, by this I mean it is caused by female readers mostly. But I wanted to get everybody's opinions on it to see what experiences everybody else has had with this, and to sort of just kind of check the pulse on like what everybody is seeing or experiencing or has experienced or what they look for in this thing. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through LMY, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story or a fragment using that prompt, and the first Monday video of the month is basking in the creativity of this community by reading some of those prompts. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out, submit your first chapter and your cover, and they will be right here on the channel at some point. I kind of randomly select them from the pile. And then hopefully that'll help more readers find your work, because once you've got it out there, it deserves to find its readers. The third thing is if you would like to check out any of my work, there are links down in the description below. You can get them at any of your favorite retailers where you get books, or the library upon request. So I hope you will check those out. Bleed More, Body More 3 coming out soon. But anyway, there we are with all of that. Before we get into the subject, I want to posit this question to you. When you're reading, what is the purpose for you reading fiction? Not nonfiction, I want to clarify. Do you read fiction for escapism? Do you read it to totally forget and divorce yourself from reality, or do you like some reality in your story? Do you read for the fantasy of what could be, or do you read for the experience that is unlike your own in any sort of way? Do you look for some form of relatability in your characters, that especially your protagonists, or do you look just for something interesting? Do you open up your spectrum to what you're waiting to see happen to that character? Do they have to be a good guy character, or show morality, or show some form of your morality or your beliefs in order for you to enjoy the book? Or do you go into these books, into any books, with the expectation and understanding and desire even to see characters who are different from yourself? Do you feel like you are a person who is a voyeur in someone else's life, who is trying to live and see and experience somebody else who is different than you? Or do you feel like somebody who wants to be inserted into the story, and so you like the character to align with who you are? Now, as we get into the subject, I don't want to say and make any generalizations that like all men or all women of any sort of thing, but this is an issue specifically that I have seen with female readers where I've not seen with male readers as much. And that's not to say that male readers don't have the same kind of, won't put their hand on the button at times, but it is just a more common issue. Now, according to my experiences, and take that as you will. So this is, again, it's all going to be based on just what I've experienced, which is why I invite all of you to share your experiences down in the comments, because I want to see and compare and contrast. But from my experiences, female characters are pretty much impossible to write satisfactorily, period. Everyone's got a reason for hating your female character one way or another, regardless of the trope, but it's specifically some of the tropes. And there are maybe 2 or 3 different trope types that are popularly accepted, though obviously you'll still get flack for them, but they're more or less accepted by the mainstream. Like, you've got whatever is typical in movies and television. There are a lot of girl bosses in movies and television, but like, who are some very much loved female characters, contemporary female characters? Let's not go like 50 years ago. Who are some contemporary female characters from movies and television that are fairly universally loved from the last maybe 20, 30 years? In book world, I feel like one of those examples is Feyre. And I mean, obviously I don't have great feelings about Feyre, but it feels like you have to fit into a certain mainstream stereotype, or you have to create a situation where you've got kind of a girl boss self-insert. And that kind of leads into like some of the big generalized stereotypes of female characters, where you've got, say, girl boss is a very common female star archetype, where, she gets everything that she wants. Everybody wants to have sex with her. She's got all of the power. She's usually bloodthirsty. You've got like Layla. Feyre is the same way. You've got Isla from Lightlark. You got Ray. I have no idea if Ray was bloodthirsty, but a lot of the girl bosses just have zero respect for life, zero respect for other people, and part of their whole personality is humiliating and insulting and degrading everybody around them, especially their male counterparts. Then you've got the super innocent girl. Often if it's a magical setting, she'll be a healer of some kind, and she gets the super dangerous man. This is something that's akin to Anna from 50 Shades of Grey, or the main character in The Pawn and the Puppet, where you've got this girl who's got the baddest bad boy of all bad boys out there who is interested in her, and he is interested in nobody else, and he is dangerous to everybody else, but it is her kindness and innocence and whatever that is kind of even over the top levels, where she shouldn't be that naive, but she is. And she's got the healer's soul, which, you know, everybody loves that trope. I freaking love the trope of the warrior and the healer, and they do things for each other, and that is totally legitimate, but there is a way that it goes a little too far into fantasy realm for me. But you know, it's the same thing with the girl boss, is you can have a super strong, powerful female character, but within limits to make it reasonable. Another stereotype is the tomboy, which got taken into the not like other girls trope, or the pick-me, because now you've got a girl who is rejecting the gender stereotypes of what is expected of her, and it's used as a way to attack every other female character. You'll notice in a lot of books too, where, especially where it's an immature narrator, you either have a young woman, maybe in her 20s, or a teenager, or you got something in between there, where every other female character in the book is either there to go Yas Queen and support the main character in everything that she does, or they are evil. I'm pointing over there to Clara in Guns and Smoke, where you've just got this secondary female character that comes in, and for some reason they can't just have a friendship. They have to be in competition, and one of them has to be evil. And so this not like other girls thing is not actually attached to the tomboy tag, as you can be a tomboy. Again, in any of these things, if you do it in moderation and you do it like a real person, you're not going to run into an issue. But if you take it to an extreme, that's often where the issue comes from, and then everybody just acts, not everybody, that's a generalization. But then a lot of the conversation then revolves around the extreme stereotype, and then recognizing the extreme stereotype even when it's just a mild representation of something, like a tomboy, is you'll immediately start getting not like other girls. She thinks she's not like other girls, but the problem with the not like other girls trope is not that she is atypical for her gender and gender expression, it's that the not like other girls uses the fact that she is not like other girls to elevate herself above the other girls. Like, oh, that girl likes wearing makeup and dresses, I don't, and I'm better than her. Oh, that girl likes to be clean, I like rolling in the mud, that makes me better than her. Like, that's where the not like other girls thing comes from. It comes from insulting other women because you're not like other women. Then you've got the normal girls character trope type, which I feel like is more often used as for yourself insert, to put yourself in there. So she's got little to no personality. And often this still has everybody revolving around her, orbiting around her, because she is normal, but she is special. Think of Bella Swan from Twilight, where it makes a lot of sense that that would become popular because so many girls in that age group of that middle school, high school where they were reading at that time felt like they were nobody, felt like they were plain Janes. And so being that plain person that is somehow also desirable to some of these mysterious people is something that a lot of girls can desire or want to see play out, because then it makes them feel special too. Maybe a little less self-conscious. Then you got, when you go the complete opposite direction of the tomboy and you want to do the Legally Blonde type girl, or somebody who fully embraces the gender stereotypes, not even gender stereotypes, but gender expectations. I can even look at people like Marcella, because so the Westies that I'm working on with Monty is a great example of this. Because we have three main characters that are female, and then, you know, we have our three main characters that are also male, but they're not part of this conversation, except tangentially. But you've got the three main characters who are actually three different parts of the gender expression spectrum. So you've got Billy, who obviously has a boy's name because she's taken on her father's name after his death. And she was raised in the woods with her brothers, kind of separated from society. She did get raised a bit by her grandparents, by their grandparents, so she knows how to ballroom dance like a girl. But she wears pants generally because she's dressing as her brothers or as a man, you know, for safety's sake because of the position that she has in society. And then on the opposite end of that spectrum, you've got Marcella, who's a high society girl who has been trained to be a good wife to a good man because she is going to be married off by her dad to create a business relationship. And so she loves taking care of people. She embraces taking care of people. She's a very effeminate and she doesn't like being dirty. Like one of the first things that she thinks that she's gonna do when she starts making friends with Daisy is give her soap, because oh my gosh, she thinks that every girl should just feel special if she needs, like, feel clean, love yourself, have clean hair, smell good, feel special. You should not feel gross and think of yourself as gross. She wants you to be happy. She wants you to feel good about yourself. And so that's the type of personality that she's got. And then, since I just mentioned Daisy, like, I had to mention the two spectrums, because you've got Billy over here, who is totally maladjusted socially, who doesn't really have the female socialization because of how she was raised. And then you've got Marcella, who is completely socialized that way, who enjoys being that way, and who tries to help other people that way. And then you've got Daisy there in the middle of that spectrum, where she is also a high society girl, not as high society as Marcella, because she was also an outside rough and tumble kind of girl. She worked with her dad in the stables and trained horses, and so she's more used to being dirty. And because she's a little more daring, because she's a little more brash, because she kind of hung out more with her brother, with her dad, with some of the working staff and working with the horses, she doesn't necessarily get along with the other super socialized girls of her neighborhood who are very much more socially what you're expected to be. And she kind of breaks that by being brash and by being kind of dirty and by being kind of daring in a way that the girls in her neighborhood aren't daring. And so you've got that spectrum of the super effeminate to the outdoorsy, with Daisy in between, where she just doesn't fit in with her society because she's not, where she doesn't necessarily fit in her township because of her differences in the way that she expresses herself and what she's looking for, and that she knows exactly what she's looking for, and she has a certain kind of freedom that some of the other girls don't have. And there is nothing in these three that actually makes it competitive at saying one is better than the other. They're all just different. And you end up with the not like other girls. You often have the not like other girls demonizing the girly girl or demonizing the girl who might be more traditional. And that may or may not be in response to the idea that previously people felt, or girls, women felt, that they were ganged up on for being different by the groups of girls. I'm not entirely sure. I was homeschooled, so I don't know what social dynamics are like at school growing up in grade school, middle school, and high school. I know that I didn't fit in at the churches that I went to as a young girl growing up because I was different socially and I didn't try even, so I just minded my own business and grew up without friends. So there's that. But feel free to let me know your experiences in the comments below if whatever you are comfortable with sharing. There's often this corrosive competitiveness in interactions with how women view other women, and if they're not like them specifically, then there's a problem. And so this is going to carry into our longer conversation. Like, I know I'm taking forever to get to it, but this is the intro to that, okay? Because the last type that I was going to mention, the last typical trope I was going to mention of girl personalities that show up in things is the mean girl. Because often when you've got that not like other girls, or that girl who stands out, you have either the best friends constantly, like I said, complimenting that main girl, like in Twilight, or you've got the girls that are all there to be mean to the main character so that the boys around her can see how terrible that chick is and how amazing the main chick is. So then this leads into actually what is the conversation of today, where it's time to stop using the word relatable when talking about female characters. What is this obsession with the idea of relatableness, that I need to feel like this main female character? Where does it come from? Why is it like this? So let's go through the article and then I'll give a little bit extra as we go, and then at the end, and I would love to hear your thoughts. So by Carolyn Kwang-Chen Stanley on Pure Wow. Everyone has a list of words that they can't stand. Moist, crusty, bromance. The words currently at the top of my list, relatable. But wait, that doesn't have any off-putting associations, does it? Well, it's subtler than that. We see it as a hashtag, a modifier in headlines, a descriptor for celebrities, usually earnest, as in A-listers spotted in Trader Joe's, occasionally ironic, as in the $4,000 skincare routine. It's also frequently used to describe beloved TV and movie characters. Relatability is seen as a positive thing, a quality to aspire to. How many times have you received or seen the idea of, this is relatable, that character is relatable, I need my character to be relatable in order to whatever the story? Where does that expectation come from? I'm thinking of like all of the horror books. You would think that you wouldn't want a character in a horror book to be relatable because you know they're gonna die. I'm trying to think of the last thing that I really saw that was I'm thinking of The Quarry right now because I really liked the characters in general for The Quarry and I liked the style of that game, but I wouldn't call any of those characters relatable. But I don't really think of media in that sort of sense. I'm there to see a story. If I'm thinking of one of my favorite characters, Majima, I mean, I can see some of his experiences as relatable, but I don't think that he was set out to be that way. It's just because we share some experiences with other people. But I would put that in the same way as if I'm listening to somebody else talk about their experiences that they've had growing up, and I go, oh, I understand that. I can feel it. They didn't have that experience to relate to me. I can just understand it because we share an experience. So it's weird to think I need a character to be designed for me so that I can feel related to specifically, like I am written into the book. And it feels like it's related to this obsession with representation and how a character or readers sort of expect characters to reflect them in the story when the story is not about you. I don't know if you know that. The story is not about you. If you can insert yourself as the character, like that's one thing. But expecting authors to write your experiences as they're writing their characters and their story it's kind of a lot. So continuing on, let me back up. Last month, after blowing through all 8 episodes of Russian Doll on Netflix, I evangelized the show to all of my friends and got a few responses that I wasn't expecting. One friend found the protagonist, Nadia, played by Natasha Lyonne, too over the top, so obvious in her flouting of gender stereotypes that my friend no longer found her relatable. I, on the other hand, found her refreshingly specific. To say that I saw myself in Nadia would be a stretch. We're both 30-something single New Yorkers, sure, but her self-assuredness and left-brained problem-solving is where we diverge. Still, I was fascinated by the way she moved through the show's world, living by her own unique set of principles and patterns and eventually being forced to re-examine them. My friend's difference of opinion isn't the point. We're entitled to our own preferences, but her comment got me thinking, why do we so often expect female characters to be a reflection of ourselves? And why has this term become so ubiquitous? I wonder that too. Stay tuned. I have never known a man to write a TV show because he couldn't see himself hanging out with the protagonist. Tony Soprano? Forget about it. Walter White, hard pass. And anyone who lists Don Draper as a personal hero is someone I'd file under Don't Die in War with. Yet these are lauded as pillars of the so-called golden age of TV, and many of the viewers making, or at least echoing, these endorsements are women. Like I said, this is a specific trend that I've seen among female readers and viewers of media, more so than men, and so I'm wondering where it comes from other than this idea of wanting to conform. Again, we go back to the opening where we were talking about different types of female tropes and how there was often this not like other girls and this demonization of the girl that was not like them, and how common that is, especially in young adult fiction, new adult fiction, or fiction that has female characters who are kind of immaturely socialized, for lack of better terms. Like, I would call Joey immature, but not socially immature because she holds a job, she talks to people normally, she just is emotionally immature in some ways. Emotionally stunted is a better word for her. Why are we more willing to bridge the gap with male characters than female characters? Is it because we inherently hold men to a lower standard? I'm being facetious, but maybe there's some truth there. I don't think that it has to do with holding men to a lower standard. I think that oftentimes, and again, this whole thing is going to be generalization and observations from my viewpoint. I'm going to throw them out there and you can respond how you see fit, so we can exchange information. But oftentimes, girls have this fantasy of I can fix him. That goes back to like the super dangerous bad boy that only gets soft for the good girl that is going to be that one specific person. And if you switch that around to make the male the one that is going to help the girl get better, and the girl is the problem child, well, the reader or the viewer of the content can't as easily insert herself into that role because maybe the reader doesn't want to be a troubled person like that. And so then it gets harder. So I don't think it has anything to do with having lower standards. I think it has to do with having a bias against women and what women are allowed to express, what women are allowed to look like. And this is from other women towards women. I mean, some of the biggest, I've seen a lot of misogyny. Not memeing, not to use meme language here, but I've seen a lot of misogyny over the last year. And some of the worst of it is from women trying to control and determine what other women are supposed to look like, how other women are supposed to express themselves, and demonizing other women and girls for not fitting into this very strict role of what they think that women should look like or be like or act like or sound like. However, they wouldn't make that same thing for men because they find those traits attractive in men, because they're not trying to court a man. Natasha Lyonne and Russian Doll co-creator Leslie Headland recently spoke about how historically male characters have been allowed to explore the act of existence in a way that women haven't. Women's roles have too often been defined by their relation to a partner or in search of one. Think about our collective tendency to ship male-female pairings based on the most tenuous suggestion. I want to fix that right there because number one, shipping culture will ship literally anything. It has nothing to do with male, female. They will ship a banana with a man or, two besties. And it doesn't matter the gender of those besties. It does that. But there is a problem with not allowing women to explore the act of existence by being messy. Because there's this expectation somehow, for some reason, that females will fit into this perfect version of either what certain readers that want to self-insert feel is appropriate representation for that character, or else it makes women look bad, or it's seen as an insult if women act a certain way in fiction, and it's considered look like it looks bad. And so then you put much more restriction on female characters and how they can look, since they aren't allowed to look terrible or go through emotional issues that make them look bad, or else it's an insult to all women. But men can go through all of that stuff without it being considered an insult to all men, because men are demonized in general. Lyonne also mentioned that Hays Code, a set of filming rules enacted in the 30s intended to clean up Hollywood after pressures from none other than the US government, but which in reality contained a lot of sexist and racist directives that affected pop culture for decades. It was intended to promote a predetermined definition of morality, essentially qualities its enforcers hoped its viewers would emulate, while punishing or excluding anything not deemed appropriate. Naturally, this affected the disenfranchised disproportionately to white men, unsurprisingly, when you consider who held most of the proverbial reins at the time. Sure, nearly a century has passed at this point, and some have argued that the guidelines led to a lot of creative workarounds, and there's something eerily familiar about the idea that we're meant to root for women espousing the right values, say loyalty to one partner, respect for authority, and condemn those who fall outside the norm. Interestingly, the Hays Code coincided with another golden age, the golden age of Hollywood. Kind of makes you look at the classics in a different light, no? No, it really doesn't. I think there's a lot of reaching in here. If you start assuming people's intentions for anything, you can get yourself into a pit of a lot of trouble. Much has been written about the rise of unlikable female protagonists, and while that's a characterization that holds its own importance, that's not what I'm talking about exactly. I've found myself relating to characters I didn't particularly like, but the inverse is a little trickier. There's an inherent impulse to evaluate a character's motives and actions based on what we would have done in the same situation. Remember the internet's collective headshake and Molly's increasingly frustrated decisions at the most recent season of Insecure? I don't watch TV. Even famous It's Me icon Liz Lemon of the 30 Rock recently drew ire on Twitter for not actually being that relatable at all. I say this not to refute anyone's opinions, she makes some good points, who wouldn't kill for a head TV writer job, but to show how ingrained the instinct is to contrast against our own lives. You could even argue that certain shows have been built on this assumption. You don't title the show This Is Us without a slight wink to whom us is referring to. Maybe you're reading this and thinking it's a non-issue. Maybe you're an equal opportunity viewer, in which case, great. But based on conversations I've watched unfold both in person and online, innumerable think pieces, and the memification of anything to grace our TVs and laptops, there's still a widespread tendency to see characters as a surrogate self. Just consult one of the many Which Sex and the City character are you quizzes that refuse to die. Has there ever been an equivalent mapping our caricature personalities for men? Short answer, no. The concept reverberates beyond pop culture. Think of the way female political candidates are exhaustively dissected for things that have nothing to do with professional competence. How they dress, how they speak, what their marriages look like. Shouldn't values, abilities, and experiences outweigh what brands they wear or how they lost the baby weight? It's a double standard that's not just irrational, but also incredibly damaging. So that's not entirely true, at least from what I have seen with political discussion, is if somebody doesn't like you, they're going to get into all of the nitty-gritties of everything that you've ever done, even if it has nothing to do with what you're doing. I happen to remember a news cycle that just revolved around Donald Trump eating a freaking taco salad. So, or putting ketchup on steak, or, his 3 wives. So, that it's not a specific one person. It's not specific to one side, but you can if you shut off what you're seeing from other people, you can demonize what you want to demonize. It's natural and justifiable to want to see a version of yourself reflected on screen, and in terms of casting, representation is essential. But just as we want to see characters of every race, age, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic background, let's expand that definition to include characters that fall all over the moral spectrum without lumping them into good or bad. If past era storytelling didn't trust us to know whether or not someone was redeemable without hitting us over the head with it, the best 2019 writers respect their audiences enough to let them decide for themselves. Role models, particularly for young viewers, are important, but so are complex, flawed, and sometimes incomprehensible characters to show us the actual breadth of the human experience. Let's look back at a show like Friends, which may not be considered groundbreaking, but was certainly both a commercial success and something of a 90s-2000s touchstone. At the time, the characters and various plot lines were clearly sketched out to tick the relatable box: the overachiever, the romantic, the free spirit, though it's now blatantly clear that its version of relatability was hyper-specific to a certain demographic. I say that without vitriol, as someone who's seen every episode. Contrast that with, say, Killing Eve, a show whose 2 leads were written to be many things, but I doubt would I invite this person to brunch was a primary concern. We're meant to align ourselves with the protagonist, Sandra Oh's Eve, but not all of her traits are admirable ones. We watch her toy with the idea of a different, darker life. More alarming, perhaps, how easy it is to like Villanelle, the enigmatic assassin played by Jodie Comer. It doesn't get any more specific and less relatable than a killer in a pink tulle dress, but that's exactly what makes you unable to take your eyes off her. At times, I found myself unsure of how I was rooting for more, and the relationship between the two of them looked like no dynamic I've ever seen on television, let alone experienced. In an era when women are finally gaining ground in top-level writing and production roles, I think that we need to sacrifice relatability in order to encourage a landscape of female characters as wide-ranging as possible. The real-life piece is going to be tougher to change. I am horrified on a daily basis that the harassment female public figures have to face. Every public figure faces harassment. Can we not? But changing the language that we use to talk about women, both fictional and otherwise, is a start. But this is mainly a problem of how women judge other women. Am I incorrect about this? From my observations, it's women looking at other women saying, I don't like how that woman is because she is not like me. I have never seen anyone meaner to female characters than female readers and female writers. Obviously, not all, but it is female readers who will look at a female character and say, that isn't me. It's females who will look at a female character and say, oh, I don't like that that character is sexy. Oh, I don't like that that girl is different. Oh, I don't like that that girl made different choices than me. Oh, I don't like that that girl is a mom. Oh, I don't like that that girl is waiting until marriage to have sex. Oh, I don't like that that girl is sexual. It's female readers and female writers that demonize other women for not being them. That's where the whole idea of a pick-me came from. That's where the whole idea of not like other girls came from. The demonization of the other girl. And so when it comes to female stereotypes or female tropes or just female characters in general, there's no correct way to write them for anybody, because female readers are some of the meanest to female characters. And again, that's not all. I'm talking about in the extremeness of the response. There are plenty of healthy readers out there, but that's not to say that You have to like or identify with every female character you come across, or give carte blanche to a show just because it's created by women. Just don't revoke the R word. It's worth noting here that in my initial Russian Doll Love Fest, I also recommended it to a male friend who a month later has yet to watch a single episode, which is maybe what riles me the most. Women, 50% of customers, are constantly fed male narratives as stories for everyone, while the near-perfect Rotten Tomatoes score and an emphatic personal recommendation aren't enough to overcome a guy's dubiousness that he'd be able to connect with a female-led series. If we keep holding these characters to an impossible standard among ourselves, how are we going to get the other half of the population on board? Okay, I hate this so much. I hate this idea that it's like this thing of, I need to trick a man into reading or experiencing something about women. You need to not make it about being a woman, okay? And just as much as you're going to avoid, possibly you could avoid going and seeing something that is made for male consumption, other people don't owe it to you to go and see your things. It's not a bigger issue just because your male friend doesn't want to watch Russian Doll. This doesn't say whether he went and looked up what it's about and was just like, I'm not really into that, or what. It's not a bigger political issue though, just because somebody isn't interested in your show. And I hate that it goes, oh, I recommended this to a guy friend of mine, and because he doesn't want to read it, because he doesn't want to watch it, then this means that there is an issue with the entirety of the male population. As you're writing an article that says, hey, not every female character is specifically you or has to relate to you or is your self-insert, and yet you're still generalizing all men as your friend who rejected or hasn't seen your show at the time that you wrote this. That is such a contradiction. Not that we need the approval of men to validate these characters. It's not like they ever sought our approval. Can you stop being so sassy? Oh my gosh. This is not about this. Look, any plea that you had previously to say, hey, take a look at this, blah, 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 is lost by the time that you're being this rude. But if we can increase audience demand for stories about women, all kinds of women, hopefully it means one less bromance on the air. And then we got more here where it is more vitriol and it is about hurting men instead of just being about women, which is also something I hate. I don't know. I don't really get it. I don't really understand where it comes from, but there's so much of this in the pop culture, in these kinds of conversations with this sort of POV where it's like, it's not about supporting women. It's not about liking women. It's about hating men and getting back at men. And that's not a good place to be. None of my stories have anything to do with the hate of anybody. And I can't imagine having everything that drives you is the thing that it's because you hate somebody. Okay, so I want to talk about this specifically with this relatable thing with whether or not somebody should approve of the characters. So you've got Joey in Bodymore. She is a mess. She is undoubtedly a mess. She's dealing with trauma that she never had any real help with dealing with, has never been able to deal with. And she is really bad in the second book. Like, she died. Like, because of circumstances specifically, you can understand why she is as bad as she is, but she is very bad off in the second Bodymore book. And there are people who think that character, that Joey, shouldn't be as imperfect as she is, shouldn't say certain words because they don't like that when a protagonist talks like that. What says that a protagonist has to be moral? So that's at least one thing that is on here that we are agreeing with. The one reason that I picked this article to talk about this with is because the author of this article and I have such very different beliefs and a very different approaches to things or understanding of things, obviously, in the way that I've responded to some of her stuff. But we both are seeing this problem with relatability. And we also see a difference in like how to solve it or what is going on, why it's happening. And so I also think that that's a fair reason to like look at the article and then just talk it through where some of our differences are. So with Joey, she is a tomboy, but she doesn't consider herself any better than anybody else. In fact, she has very low self-esteem and thinks herself very low to the point that as soon as she is abandoned, she figures she's going to kill herself because then she doesn't want to be the person to abandon other people since she knows what that's like. But she also knows as soon as people are gone, then she is just going to go because that's what she's worth. And so she has it very rough. The number of times that I've heard could not relate, and so that directly influenced the experience because they needed to find a relatability to that character. They needed to feel like they were that character, has always been kind of crazy to me, considering I read so many things that are not about me fitting into that character or me fitting into that nonfiction person. I'm not trying to be those people. I'm just watching the story unfold, watching the information come in. And so this obsession with relatability and whether or not your female character specifically is considered to have the right morals, and that includes the right morals doesn't just include whether she's virginal or whether she's kind or whether she's whatever, because the girl boss is another version of this, where she's considered strong enough to be on her own, where she's considered I don't need no man, where she's considered sexually empowered and she can get anything that she wants, and she is often great in bed the first time that she has sex. So there are all of these ways that it says this is how you need to write a female character or else it's an insult. And there are so many different people that have this different variation of how they think female characters have to be written, or else you're a failure, or else it's an insult, or else I hate you. And they have no desire or ability or understanding to read anything other than a character that they would like to live the lives of, that they find relatable. But then ultimately that's a failure of empathy because you refuse to see or understand a character that is so different from your own. And if that's how you like to read, like this isn't any comment on who is a better reader, who's not a better reader. This goes back to the question I asked at the beginning. It goes back to why is it you read? And do you read to put on the shoes of another character? Do you read in order to escape and live as that character? So you want those desirable situations. You want a character that you can personally enjoy and say that you feel proud of. Or are you the kind of person that reads a character and you're like, I need them to morally line up with me or else I'll feel bad? Because part of that comes in with this emotional connection to the character where you feel like you are that person. And it's just a different way of reading. One of the things that I've really enjoyed getting to talk to other people about how they read and what they experience is getting to know better how different people experience a book or what they take away from a book, because knowing how different people read actually really informs the responses, or it has informed the responses to me that readers have. Anyway, so I just wanted to posit the subject, how impossible it is to write female characters, why it is. And I think that there is this pressure, there's this social pressure for females to conform. And my experiences are going to be limited on that because I was homeschooled, but I also know that I was never somebody that fit in, and even at church, because I just was different and I can't read things correctly and I end up screwing it over all the time. Even with people as an adult, because I don't necessarily understand what people expect of me, and I don't act in the way that I don't act in a way that is apparently expected of me. So it's all just a thing. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments down below. What do you think about relatability? How important do you think relatability is to a character? I know that I often see it come up in critiques and in queries that people demand this relatableness. And is it a whole relatable, or is it like a single element that is relatable? Or do you not care if a character is relatable? Let me know your thoughts on this, on female characters, on is it difficult to write acceptable female characters? And by that, I don't mean like for you to write characters, but do you ever worry about the way that you write female character, your female characters? It's going to get some sort of backlash. It's going to get a weird response. And personally, I am curious to see what the response will be like for Marcella, Billy, and Daisy, because they're all so incredibly different. And they have such different story arcs. They have such different relationships with not only the men in their lives, the men that they choose for their other halves, but also with each other. And one of the things that I really love about everything that I'm doing with Monty is actually the friendships that are between the characters and how the stories are heavily influenced not only by the romantic elements of them, but that the characters all independently create relationships with one another, and that influences some of what's going on. Like when Marcella joins the group, she's kind of been kept inside of a house, inside of a very comfortable living situation, and now she's all of a sudden living in the woods, rode on a horse for the very first time, obviously kind of in some pain. And she looks a little stuck up because she's just hiding away because she misses home. She's homesick because she's never really been out like this before. But she's trying to keep it to herself, and she's trying to, she doesn't want to make her man feel guilty or bad about anything. And then they talk, and Daisy gets a sense of who she is, really, and they form a friendship. But then that friendship actually becomes stronger than the relationship Daisy has with the man that Marcella is seeing, because Daisy does not like Tommy, because Tommy is abrasive. But she would do so much for her friendship with Marcella. And so, like, all of these relationships in this story, and even in the Easties, and even in Numina, they're all independent of love interests. And I love to watch just these characters interact and form those relationships with each other and how different they are. But anyway, this is getting away from things. That was brought up just because I'm interested in seeing what the response is to that. Just like I'm interested in seeing what the response is to, Casey and Ralph's relationship, friendship, brotherhood coming out, and what that looks like for them. And the forgiveness that Joey finds and the healing that Joey finds through her journey. And it's all an interesting thing. I think it's super limiting to say females have to act a certain way. It has to be relatable. You can't let them be messy or else they have to be better than everybody else or else. And it's kind of a weird time in a writing conversation. But it's not even like everything. It's like in specific sects of it that it's exceptionally bizarre and restrictive. And if you ignore those, then it's like, whatever. And I feel like part of it is social media. The social media books specifically hit these tropes. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Where did this come from? This pressure come from? Why do you think it is? And anything related to relatable characters, relatable female characters, or this conformity in the situation. Have you seen it? Again, I can only speak on observations that I've had and share them with you. And then hopefully learn from the conversations, because I'm an idiot. Looking forward to the discussion. Have a great day and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?